Professor Karnas. This is Kelsey and Teresa and Mo, and we are vlogging you from Paris.
We're in Paris!
So the first thing that we'd like to be talking about is the lobbying discussion that we had in Brussels. And I have to say, this is actually my favorite discussion. No, we are vlogging right now! Damn it, Phil!
They're interrupting us.
I have to say that was my favorite discussion because of the discussions that we had in class about the transparency, and they actually talked about this a lot in the lecture.
It was very relevant. I really enjoyed it.
So the interesting things that they said were they actually discussed what types of organizations are vlogging, and that actually includes churches, which was the most surprising fact I heard because I did not know that churches could vlog. I mean, could lobby. Let's see. The also thing was law firms. I didn't know law firms were really big on lobbying. And then NGOs and think tanks, which were things that I knew more about.
The headquarters was beautiful. I want to work there. So that's the main takeaway I got out of it was, wow, I want to do this one day. So that's really exciting.
The other thing they talked about was the importance of timing and how timing is everything, and I thought that was interesting.
The idea of being relevant yet not overbearing towards the MEPs and MPs. So that's really important.
Let's see. And then they also discussed how different companies lobby. The first is through partnerships. Didn't know that. Yeah, I can't read anything else I wrote down. But that was definitely my favorite discussion.
I also
because
really like the case
had
that
not
we did about ZEP, the Zero Emissions Project. That was really cool, and I really like how they walked us through their game plan. Because I mean, if I want to work there, I want to be able to talk about that and be able to apply that to whenever I talk about my interviews. So it was really cool.
Mo, do you have anything to add?
Yes. The one which I really like was going to European Investment Bank. It was really interesting because it was I think that was the first bank I ever saw which is non-profit, and there wasn't I never thought of the concept of bank being a non-profit and working for the betterment of the whole Europe. So that was really interesting, and I really want to work there.
It was also interesting. She was talking about a lot. She was talking about.
We're gonna start moving now.
She was talking about a lot of the things that the bank can't do, which I found very interesting because I didn't know there were so many limitations to such a big bank. And I'd also never been to that kind of institution before, so it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, I thought that never existed, European Investment Bank.
Really? No. So it actually exists. There's one in Freiburg. I learned about it in my social entrepreneurship class, so it was really cool to see it on the big scale.
Yeah, that was really cool because I didn't know about it.
And so, let's see. Oh, okay. So the next thing I want to talk about was our reflection session. Actually, I don't know if you guys would. Oh, me and Mo are in the same reflection session, and that was interesting because he really made clear a lot of the current issues that are going on, especially in Turkey, which is something that I didn't necessarily know a lot about, but I know a lot of my peers did. So he was able to talk a lot about.
Supposed to be in our vlog seminar.
So I'm here today to talk about first the Weber-Shandwick talk, and then the Flanders representation and presentation about the government and the system that Belgium works under. So I absolutely loved the Weber-Shandwick talk. I really thought it was very interesting how the organization and company works together with many different firms and many different projects to get them through government and through the many institutions of the EU. And I really enjoyed the idea that Weber-Shandwick really works to promote actually good businesses and good business proposals, because I know once you get to that top level, many lobbyist campaigns that probably aren't for the best of the EU can sometimes slip through the cracks and get in when they're not supposed to be getting in. Sorry, Kelsey, this is for you so you can edit stuff. I know I'm really weird about talking, so please cut this stuff out. What I also really enjoyed about the Weber-Shandwick talk is that, oh no, cut this part out too. I need to think about words. Okay, I got it now. What I also really liked about the Weber-Shandwick organization talk was that the idea of the smaller team working together on the larger project, which really seemed interesting, and it's really new for industry, especially in consulting. So I really appreciated to know that Weber-Shandwick really is up to date in good business practices and really good at what they're doing. I know I really personally wanted to work there the second I walked into the office. I thought, wow, This is really cool, and I really like the idea of consulting and working with MEPs and many different members of the institutions, the commission, and the council to get projects done and pushed through and policies made. So it was awesome to see how an outside organization is able to make that big deciding factor for the European Union. It's another cut. So now I'm going to talk about the Flanders thing. So feel free to cut this part out too. I almost wanted to add this like clip that Larry gave me of I'm filming the Eiffel Tower and Larry's like, "What? Like France is running out of steel and they made this? Are you fucking serious?" It's really funny. I'll have to send it to you. Okay, give it like 5 seconds, then we'll move on to the Flemish representation to the EU. So now I want to talk about the early morning lecture that I went to, which was the Flanders permanent representation to the EU, which was awesome. It was a really great, well-structured presentation that gave me a lot of information really quickly because I genuinely knew nothing about Belgium before we came to this trip. So I didn't know that Belgium was divided. I didn't know about Wallonia or Flanders. I didn't understand that Belgium was actually kind of a divided city almost because people try to mesh together, but it's really difficult. Everyone speaks French, but only a certain population only speaks French, which was pretty interesting. And throughout the talk, I kept thinking back to America and how this business model, or their model, not a business model, their operations model really wouldn't work. They completely operate on compromise. And while it reminded me initially of a two-party bipartisan system, such as the United States also has, I realized that the two parts of Belgium are completely separate. They vote separately, they act separately, which was extremely interesting once you get to the EU level and you have to work entirely on compromise because the French and the Dutch completely think differently on many issues. So that was a very interesting thing for me to learn about because I didn't know that one existed and that they actually have they work relatively well separately as well as together when they have to get to the supranational level. Which was really cool. I'm trying to think about other cool things about that talk. Give it a second. Another thing that I really also liked about that talk was that the speaker itself really didn't present too much of a bias. He answered all of the questions very well. I was very nervous originally that since he was Flemish, that he was only going to speak about Flanders, but he's actually very knowledgeable about the topic, about both parties, how they work, and the operations of the Belgian government to a level that it didn't come off that he was Eurosceptic or Europositive. He really presented the facts very well to us, and I really appreciate that because throughout many of our lectures, many speakers are very either Eurosceptic or they'll give their opinion, but what they're talking about could be different than what they're actually presenting on, which can get a little confusing. So I really like the structure, the content, the food. It was actually pretty good stuff too. The tea and the coffee was really good and really refreshing in the morning. And how that entire lecture went. It was really nice and I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to meet with him.
So migration was one of the crises which was heavily discussed in all of the meetings which we went. Today, particularly my favorite meeting was the one with the Turkish representative because it was really interesting to see Turkey's perspective on all the global issues which are going on nowadays in Europe. We talked about Turkey from Turkish perspective, so it was really nice to hear their point of view. The speaker was really nice and friendly, and I would say that she was like a pure diplomat because there were things which she didn't really wanted to talk about, for example, like Erdogan and his policies. So she like tried to hide that topic under the table. However, on some cases, she was like really open. For example, migration, she said it's really important for US and Russia to make a deal, some sort of deal, in order to make Syria a better place and how it would affect Turkey at the same time. Other topics, she also gave us a spoiler attack on Cyprus issue, and she said it is a possibility that Cyprus issue would be resolved by the end of this year. Um, Other meetings which I really liked was the one by Polish guy. He was the DG Trade and like some policy instructor for TDIP, and I didn't know anything about TDIP, so it was really interesting how he made it very easy and not so difficult to understand the things he was working on.
Hello, Professor Karras. Today I will be talking about two lectures that we visited in Paris. The first one is at a bank. The first one I'd like to be talking about is something I had to attend for my finance and banking class, and we went to a bank in Paris. And we met with somebody who was friends with actually one of our traveling friends. I can't remember his name, Max, I think. And he talked firstly about the three bank sectors: private, public, and cooperative. And then because he knew the most about the public bank sector, that's the one we talked about the most. Interestingly, that is actually the biggest sector. And what's interesting about it is that even though it's not state-owned, it's still very highly linked to municipality, and it does run on public law, so it's very much invested in the public. So the first thing that he talked about was the decentralization of these public banks, because Germany has very strong small and medium-sized businesses, which is something I've kind of heard numerous times in my various lectures and discussions with German citizens. Because of this, decentralization is key because it allows local banks and developing businesses to thrive. So this public sector of the bank actually reinvests into small and medium businesses, kind of continuing the cycle of growth. And this is probably the reason why small and medium businesses are so strong in Germany. Not to say that there aren't large corporations, but not necessarily in the way that there are in America. So that was the most interesting thing from that lecture. The other lecture that I went to in... Sorry, the last one was in Brussels. Yeah, the last one was in Brussels. This one was in Paris. And this was at the IES Paris Center. And in this lecture, we actually talked about the global financial crisis, which I knew some about, but this actually really opened my eyes to how much the U.S. was a catalyst and kind of an initiator for this crisis. So in 2007, in the housing bubble, the mortgage market collapsed in the United States. And this kind of started the global financial crisis. Stocks started declining drastically, and then the first thing that happened in Europe happened in UK, and there was this massive evaporation of liquidity. So just investors and savers were kind of running to banks trying to liquidate their assets, meaning turn their assets into cash. And this was something that couldn't necessarily be could be accommodated by the banks. And then the International Monetary Fund lost $1 trillion, which is a lot of money. So kind of this series of events that led to the global financial crisis, and that kind of were all started in the United States. He did talk about different theories for understanding the global financial crisis. I really only understood one of them, which was the neoclassical theory. And this was the idea that markets are capable of reaching an equilibrium by themselves. So this kind of is the laissez-faire method, where you let the market establish its own equilibrium without necessarily a lot of government involvement. And whether or not that works, I think we're yet to see, because I think, and the man speaking thinks that we're still covering from this global financial crisis.